Welcome to the Economy Magazine at I-24 News, where we provide a daily view on the world markets and the global economy. Well, coming up today, Spanish elections. The ruling party loses parliamentary elections after years of pushing unpopular austerity. And Israeli poverty in the spotlight. NGO Latet discovers economic destitution is costing Israel close to 50 billion shekels a year. Let's start now with financial headlines. Well, Asian shares traded mixed on Monday. Japan's Nikkei fell 0.37% as the Hang Seng advanced 0.17%, and the Shanghai climbed almost 1.8%. European stocks opened the day lower as oil hit an 11-year low. By the afternoon, London's FTSE rose 0.77%, Germany's DAX increased 0.56%, and the French CAC moved 0.25% higher. Meanwhile, Wall Street looks set now for triple-digit gains. Well, Brazil's embattled President Dilma Rousseff has named now a new finance minister. Choosing Nelson Barbosa, the left-wing economist and close aide to the president, signals a dramatic break with the deficit-cutting policies of her current administration. In his first press conference, Barbosa told reporters that he would continue with the fiscal changes needed to pull the economy out of recession.
The focus of our monetary policy will be to continue promoting fiscal balance and increasing the government's primary balance, because fiscal balance is a necessary condition for the recovery of economic growth. Only through fiscal stability we will reach sustainable growth.
Argentina now moving in a different direction with its new center-right president, Mauricio Macri. On Friday, the Inter-American Development Bank said that it would seek to give South America's third-largest economy $5 billion in credits as the central bank now looks to shore up its reserves, currently standing below $25 billion. Argentina relies on hard currency reserves to finance imports and also to prop up its currency. The country has been locked out of the global bond market since its default back in 2002.
It's one more message, in addition to all the others that we received in recent days, in which the world was tired of Argentina's irrelevance and wants Argentina to leave this behind and start to connect in an intelligent manner with the world.
And U.S. President Barack Obama thanked Congress for passing a bipartisan spending and tax package Friday, now set to fund the government through September 2016. At a White House press conference, the U.S. president underscored that he was pleased this last budget invested in both the military and the middle class. Part of the package includes $3.1 billion in aid to Israel. Also on Friday, President Obama signed into law the Hezbollah International Financing Prevention Act of 2015. Which will impose tougher sanctions on banks that knowingly do business with that group. Well, some hope that the law will curb the terror organization's cash windfall once Iran sanctions are finally lifted.
Today, they passed a bipartisan budget deal. I'm not wild about everything in it. I'm sure that's true for everybody, but it is a budget that, as I insisted, invests in our military and our middle class without ideological provisions that would have weakened Wall Street reform or rules on big polluters.
We'll shift our attention now to the Spanish elections on Sunday. The ruling Conservative Popular Party, led by PM Mariano Rajoy, missed the 176 seats needed for a parliamentary majority. Here's more on the economic impact.
Spanish national elections saw the ruling Conservative People's Party take another win, albeit slim, with over 73% turning out to vote. Though unemployment has dropped from a 2013 high of 27% to 21%, the still high number of out-of-work people, suspected corruption, and a separatist movement in Catalonia were central themes in the election.
I believe Spain needs a stable government. Over the past 4 years, we've accomplished many things. Spaniards have made much effort. Now we must persevere in the things we've done over the years.
But the big story was the surge of the Podemos party, a left-wing outgrowth of Spain's anti-austerity movement in the country which, out of EU countries, only follows Greece in unemployment. The new Podemos party took third place in the election and, together with the Socialist Party, hold 175 seats in the 350-seat parliament, just one shy of a majority. The win signals to most that in the face of ongoing economic strife, Spain's 4-decade-old two-party platform has given way to an open field.
Never again a Spain without its people. Here today we pledge ourselves to a new commitment that defends social justice and decency. Democracy has to reach the economy so that human rights as well as dignity are not violated.
Indeed, Podemos' share of the vote was just over 20%, and a signal of the mood in Spain. Meanwhile, the Conservatives hold 122 seats, and so they will have to look to form a coalition to reach enough seats to rule.
And now for our Startup Nation segment, where we put the spotlight on upcoming Israeli companies. We spoke with the founder of Startify, which launched just last week. Israeli startup Startify provides a new way for individuals and brands to promote their content online. And for insight, we are joined by the startup's founder, Oren Barzilai. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hello, Natalie. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So tell us, what is Startify?
Startify enables brands and individuals to promote themselves and their content over anything they share. For example, if you are a brand, assuming that you have a Twitter account, Facebook account, or any other type of social presence. So you share content. Some of the content you share is your own, which is great, but some of the content you share is a third-party content. It can be an article on New York Times, in Medium.com, or an interview in I-24. Whenever you share third-party content, you actually tell your followers, leave my Twitter account and go read or consume that content. What we do, what Startify enables you to do, is to add your branded badge at the bottom right corner of the screen that tells you, shared by Natalie. And Natalie also recommends you to read this content. That way, your followers have an opportunity to go back to your content, or if they will reshare that content, their followers, for the first time, will be exposed to your brand, your recommended content.
Interesting. So who are your biggest customers?
Our customers varies. We have small startups such as MediSafe, AppsFlyer, Weebits, and we have fashion brands such as Mammoth, and we have VCs such as OpenView Ventures, and we have large brands such as Kraft Food. So we have all range of users of accounts.
And how do you expect to generate revenue and make this a viable business?
So Startify is completely free for its users, but in about a couple of months from today, we will announce premium features that will cost money, of course.
Interesting. Well, what is it like? What are the benefits of starting a business here in the Startup Nation?
So you have all of the ecosystem centered in a very, very small location. You have all of your first potential early adopters, your first investors, your colleagues, your technical background. All of the support of the ecosystem is centered inside the small radius of Tel Aviv or Herzliya. It's about 15 to 20 Ks, which is very, very small. Everything is about 25 to 30 minutes away from you, which helps a lot to move fast and learn fast and improve fast and build a great company from here.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Oren Barzilai. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
An annual report reveals a grim view on poverty in the state of Israel, and the country's politicians weigh in. Here's the story.
The Israeli National Insurance Institute filed its annual report last week, finding that 22% of Israelis live in poverty. The numbers from the Central Bureau of Statistics suggest that just over 1.7 million people, including over 776,000 children, were living below the poverty line in 2014, an increase of 0.2% from the previous year. And the reactions from Israel's parliamentarians, ministers and opposition alike, spoke to the issue.
One of the main reasons for the rise in poverty level is the slashing of child welfare programs that were undertaken by the previous government.
Netanyahu is personally responsible for the level of poverty in Israel. In 2003, he hit hard at hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens, and in 2013, he hit them all over again.
Meanwhile, Latet, an umbrella organization for Israeli charities, says that the number of poor is closer to 2.6 million, and zooming in on certain sectors gives tough details to the already high numbers of poor. The hardest hit sectors are the 22.3% of elderly living in poverty, as well as the 54.3% of ultra-Orthodox families and 52.6% in the Arab sector. And working families are feeling the rising hardships as well, with the poverty rate jumping more than half a point to 13.1% last year.
It is very important to look at workers. We very much want to live in a society in which employed people are not poor, but we see that we have not yet achieved this goal.
Israel sits right behind Mexico with the second highest poverty rate of OECD countries. Meanwhile, Welfare and Social Services Minister Chaim Katz called for $18 billion to be invested to bring poverty levels to OECD norms in coming years.
For further insight now, we are joined by Hen Hartzog of BDO Consulting. Thank you as ever for being with us.
Hello.
Well, this is a staggering statistics. 1.7 million people here live in poverty. Was that surprising to you?
Well, the poverty indicator is basically just another indicator of the problem of inequality in the Israeli economy. And Israel is ranked one of the top, unfortunate rank of one of the top countries in terms of inequality.
Right, and here we're looking at this graphic that actually shows the OECD average. Israel just after Mexico in terms of the worst relative income poverty.
Right. In terms of income poverty, in terms of what we call the Gini index, the Gini coefficient of inequality, we have 37% inequality in the economy, which is one of the highest in the world. But if you want to translate and understand this inequality in terms of the cost of living in Israel, I can give you two examples. One is the cost of housing in Israel. The cost of housing in Israel today, an average apartment costs about 140 average salaries. If you compare that to the US, it's twice as much expensive. So it's twice as much difficult for an Israeli young couple to purchase an apartment.
Based on the salary disparity.
On the
there.
relative, right. And another example is the cost of food. An average Israeli family, the expenditure on food is about 16% of the total expenditure. For the US, for an American family, it's just over 5%. So in relative terms, the food expenditure in Israel is 3 times as high. So if you take these two basic components of consumption, food and housing, and you see the comparative disadvantage, then you can translate the problem of cost of living.
Yes, but at the same time here in Israel, they have an unemployment rate, which is considered quite low at 5%. And also just recently, the Knesset passed legislation to raise the minimum wage. So isn't that enough to offset this? What's going on here?
Yes, the indicator of unemployment rate is really misleading here. Because if we have 5 or 5.9% unemployment, it doesn't mean that the rest of the 95% are employed. Because the figure of unemployment has two deficiencies. One, it doesn't measure, it only measures unemployment in terms of people who want to participate in the labor force. So if you have women who are not participating, who choose not to participate, if you have ultra-Orthodox population that is not participating in the labor force, and another problem is part-time workers. If you work part-time, even if you work just 1 or 2 hours a month, you're already considered employed. And in the current situation in the Israeli economy, that we have a lot of contract workers who wish to work full-time but are unable to, they are counted as fully employed, although their earning is really partial employment.
Right, so that's misleading here.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the ultra-Orthodox community. They also specified in the report the Arab community, which has a high poverty rate of 52%, and also the ultra-Orthodox even higher than that. What's going on here with these communities suffering the most from this crisis?
Yes, we have three big populations which are the source of inequality in Israel, the concentration of inequality. One is the elderly population. Over 20% are below the poverty line. And the second two populations are the ultra-Orthodox and the Arab. Now, there is good news and bad news, so to speak. The bad news in terms of this population is that this is a population, the Arab and the ultra-Orthodox, that is predestined to poor living, because a child born to an ultra-Orthodox or to an Arab family today has a probability or a 50% chance to become poor. And this is quite devastating. But the good news
Why is that the case, though? Is this from the community itself, or is the government perhaps not investing enough in those population groups?
It's a problem of participation in the labor force, because if you look at these populations, you would see a low percentage of participation in the labor force of the ultra-Orthodox men, and a low participation in the labor force of Arab women. That's one source. The second source is education. if your education system is not strong enough, if you don't have enough educational skills, then you have no way to earn a living in the modern society. And we have a problem in this sense in both of these sectors.
Right. And just real quickly, last word, the government, of course, was quick to criticize this report. What is their defense?
Well, if you look at government policy in terms of inequality, you can cure the problem, like in medicine, you can cure the illness, or you can just treat the symptoms. What the government doing today is mostly treat the symptoms. Welfare benefits, you treat the symptoms. And the government should do more to improve employment, to improve education, and cure the problem.
Well, fascinating. Thank you very much for being here with us as always. That wraps up our show today. Do stay tuned here every day for all your global economic analysis. Thank you as ever for joining.